Locations too. So happy to be here, happy to see some familiar faces in the audience too. A little bit about me for those of you who don't know, I'm the author of 7 books. I'll tell you briefly about each of them. As he said, I'm a retired professor of English. I stopped the full-time grind in 2021. I do still teach part-time and on my terms for Duke University's Osher Lifelong Learning Institute and for Coastal Carolina's Lifelong Learning Institute. And it's really renewed my faith in teaching that was sort of lost after my retirement. I love that student body, and I love the idea of students signing up for classes simply because they're interested in learning about the thing. No grades, no attendance, no meetings, just learning, which is what it should be. I'm an Ernest Hemingway specialist. That's my area of expertise. I've written 2 books about it. But now I'm an ocean educator, and I travel all over the United States offering workshops that are, especially for the kiddos, they're interactive, kids, teens, and adults. And as I said, I'm going to be on a book tour for the new book that's coming out next year. So I'm busy pretty much all the time, but I would consider myself an extreme beachcomber. I like to go out at times of day and night when other people don't like to be there. I like it when the weather conditions deteriorate because everybody else leaves the beach. And I am continually challenging my mind and my body to see how far I can push it, how far I can go, how heavy a bucket I can carry. So it's been a good life so far on the beach. A little bit about the books. They are on Amazon if you're interested. Shark tooth hunting on the Carolina coast will teach you very specifically where to hunt, how to hunt, and how to identify the species. And the teeth that you see there are very, very special. Those are Carolina cream. Shark's teeth, the name Carolina cream is about the coloration that happened in the process of fossilization. We'll talk a little bit about that. Those are great white shark's teeth found in Cherry Grove, about 40 minutes or so from here. One of my favorite places to hunt for shark's teeth if you're interested in the trip up there. I'm the author of Hemingway Anemone, The Birth of Sport Fishing at the End of the World. I am a big game fishing historian and wrote a book about Hemingway's big game fishing in the Bahamas in the 1930s. Most people do not know that he was an original co-founder of the International Game Fish Association, the body that still manages world records to this day. So that book is about the formation of the IGFA, but more importantly about his rise to the point where he was a pretty, he was in his 30s when he first wet a line in Key West as far as saltwater fishing. And within a decade, he was one of the 10 best fishermen in the world. And so he threw himself into it, and this book is about sort of how he did it. My mom and I wrote the book Jean Lafitte Revealed, Unraveling One of America's Longest Running Mysteries. It is about the pirate Jean Lafitte from New Orleans. We proved that he faked his death in the 1820s. He used a series of aliases, but then he landed in North Carolina using his last alias and lived to be 96 years old and never got caught. We ended up making the national news with our discovery. And the sword you see there is actually Lafitte's sword, which had been hanging on 2 rusty nails in a Freemason lodge that he helped to found using the fake name. They didn't know who he was. And I found his hand-etched signature on the scabbard using a black light. And so we made the national news after the sword was found. But the book is not historical fiction, like this really happened, and it's pretty much the start to finish our process for solving the historical mystery. My mother, Beth Yarbrough, is also, I believe, on the schedule for your first Thursday speaker series next year. She just published a book about historic preservation. So if you can handle a double dose of us, come back to her program. I think it's early next year. I'm the author of 2 novels. They are both comedies. I don't know how to write anything other than funny books when it comes to fiction. In Search of Jimmy Buffett, A Key West Revival is about quitting a teaching job you hate and moving to Key West to try to meet Jimmy Buffett, obviously written before he passed away. Higher Education Chronicles of a Dumpster Fire was written upon my retirement. My therapist suggested I needed to detox after I quit my job. She said I was carrying some stuff. And so that book is about 1 academic year in a really wacky English department at a pretty messed up university. And it is funny all the way through. So if you are a teacher, were a teacher, or have had any part in the system, it's good medicine to read it, I think. And then lastly, I'm so excited, University of Georgia Press is publishing the Ultimate Shell Seeker's Guide, Building a Better Beachcombing Strategy. What you're gonna hear today is a snapshot of that book. What the book's gonna give you though is 300 pages of everything you ever wanted to know about how to find the best shells in America. It is gonna be released in May. It's already available for pre-order on Amazon and on the University of Georgia Press website. If you're interested, it will not ship, however, until May. And it's gonna be a Wormslow Foundation science book, which I'm very excited about. And if you like what you hear today, you can follow me on Facebook. I have a really fun page called On the Beach with Dr. Ashley Oliphant. It will show you where I'm hunting, what I'm learning, and what I'm finding. And I am maxed out on the number of friends that I can have without making a new page, which I'm too tired to do. But what you can do is hit the follow button and still see all the content. So please join me. We are going to talk strategy today. I move really fast, so hang on to what you brought. We're going to take you through a lot of information. Please do feel free to take pictures of my slides if you see something that inspires you or some information that you want to take with you. And I also like to sort of start by talking about ethical beachcombing, which is a really important thing to consider if we're going to be out on the beach. The main thing I think that's involved in ethical beachcombing is my position that we never live shell, which means if something is alive out there, whether it's a starfish or a sand dollar or a creature, a seashell that's actually still got the animal in it, we don't take it. There are people in the shelling community who disagree with that, and I will never be on board with them. My position is always going to be, if it's alive, we can't take it. And we need to encourage other people to do that. And it's very important that we reach the next generation of kiddos who are coming up so that they know those rules too. Ethical beachcombing also involves things like leaving the beach the way it was when you found it. So it obviously means no trash. It means if you see trash, you pick it up, even if you didn't make it. There's nothing wrong with digging a hole on the beach. It's great fun. You just want to make sure that you're filling in that hole before you leave the beach. We know that sea turtle babies and mamas can fall into those holes and die if we don't fill them in. And ask me how many holes I've fallen in as I'm walking out at night. They're very difficult to see, especially if you're distracted with a flashlight looking for seashells or shark's teeth. It can be really dangerous. With holes as well, a good rule of thumb, if you have kiddos who are on the beach and are digging a hole, you need to make sure that the hole goes no deeper than the knee to foot of the shortest kiddo in your group. That will protect them from sinkholes, which there have been, unfortunately, a couple of kids in America who have died in the last year from sinkholes on beaches. Those sinkholes are becoming more frequent because we are continually renourishing our beaches. And when that renourishment happens, great big air bubbles get put underneath the sand and it makes the sinkhole risk a lot greater. So with kiddos, knee to ankle of the shortest kiddo in your group, that's as deep as the hole can go. Otherwise, you're pushing it. Ethical beachcombing too involves if you are going to be hunting in a sea turtle nesting area, April to October, you want to be using a red light instead of a white light. Because the white light confuses the turtles and makes them, because they need the moon, the light of the moon. We don't like white light when it's turtle nesting season. And in some areas of Florida where the sea turtle activity is so frequent, I don't hunt at all, even with a red light. I like to sort of leave those beaches alone. I'll hit them at sunrise, but I'll wait until all of the turtles have done their business in the night. But let's make sure we all keep our eyes on ethical beachcombing, because I am obviously a recipient of the great gifts of the ocean. I find a lot of things, and I really believe that if I ever started to bend those rules, that Mother Ocean would stop giving me great things. So I would like to keep that going. But everything we do is going to start with a tide chart. A lot of people think when you head out to the beach, it's just going to be like a dumb look. We're just going to see what the ocean has washed up today. And you will find some things on the dumb luck strategy, but I actually don't believe in luck. I believe in hard work and preparation and study. And so I hope what we talk about today will inspire you to sort of think differently about your strategy. And the tide chart is the first thing we need to think about. So you can find them for free online. All you have to do is Google the name of the place you want to go. So if it was today, you put Litchfield Beach, you would put Litchfield Beach, South Carolina tide chart, December 2025. It's going to give you what looks like a calendar, and you click on the day that it is, and it's going to show you, usually most beaches have 2 high tides and 2 low tides in a day. It's going to show you when those are going to be happening, and then over on the other side, it's going to show you in feet how high the water's going to be. And those numbers matter, they're very, very important. With the tides, I prefer to be hunting on an outgoing tide. So I like to get there at a high tide and be there for the roughly 6 hours it takes for the water to fall down. So if we had a beach house, let's say this was our beach house and that's the ocean, there was at 3:45 in the morning a high tide. Let's make this center of our aisle the 0 mark, 0 feet. This is the average, it's called the tide datum. This is the average middle tide on the beach that you're hunting. This high tide went to 3.35 feet, so we'll say that's about right here. And then 6 hours, roughly 6 hours later, low tide didn't take us all the way down to the 0, it took us to 0.16. And then in 6 hours, it went higher this time. At 4:31, it went to 4.56 feet, which is pretty high water for around here. And then at low tide, about 6 hours later, it went to 0.3, which was lower. This is an average tide chart. Nothing about this would have gotten me excited. The tide chart that would get me excited is this one. And so this is what happened. At 12:35 in the morning, it went to 4.67 feet, which is pretty high, right? Then 6:36 in the morning, it goes to negative 0.99. That negative mark indicates a negative low tide. That means that water went below the 0 and it went way, 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 way out, right? These negative low tides are almost always associated with a full moon, and because the water is pulling at a harder clip at that time because of the moon. But if this was the lowest water of the year, and negative 0.99 is pretty low, what that means is all of this area that may have been covered up by water for months and months is all of a sudden going to be revealed, right? So this is new stuff that you'll be able to see, so you always want to pay attention to the negatives. And so another thing to note here, I would have gotten to that beach at 12:35 in the morning, and I would have been hunting all through the night. Think of how many people arrive at the beach at 6 o'clock in the morning thinking they're going to early shell, right? They would have completely missed that tide because it's going to be starting to come back in when they get there. And I have already picked the entire beach. There's not going to be a whole lot left. So again, this is strategy. So what I would have done at 6:36 in the morning is I would have gone home to eat and sleep. And then I come back to the beach in the afternoon because at 1:12, it's going really high, 5.1 feet. And this really high tide is often called a king tide. The ones that go really high are kings, or spring tide they're sometimes called. And then the negatives are the really lows. And then we were rodeo again because that water is going to negative 0.51, which is about right here. At 7:20 in the evening. So we had 2 really good negative low tides that day. If this was associated with a full moon, I would have been completely there for this. So tide chart absolutely matters. Second thing to consider, you have to know your moons. My husband, about a year ago, came to me. He said, "Ashley, are we ever going to be able to schedule a family vacation without consulting a moon chart first?" And I said, "No, we're not. You married it. This is what you got." I did a 5-year, not really scientific study. I keep a lot of journals in order to find patterns that teach me about better strategy for beachcombing. And over those 5 years, I discovered that your best time to hunt for anything on the beach is going to be at a full moon. Your second best time is going to be a new moon. If it's waning or waxing or gibbosing or any of that other nonsense, you can sleep in. But if it's new, if it's full, you have to be there. And if it's new, that's going to be your second best. So watch your moons. That hall that you see in the picture, that is a penny in the middle for scale. That was one walk on Holden Beach on a full moon. One person, one walk. And so when you hit it right, that's where you wind up with these pictures that you see on social media, and you're like, how did that person do that? It usually involved a whole lot of reading of conditions, which I hope you're learning about today. Next, you have to choose your location based on what it is you want to find. I have a dear friend, actually it's my best friend. She came to me a couple of years ago and she said, Ashley, I'm embarrassed because you're so good at this, I'm embarrassed to even say it. She said, I've been hunting for a sand dollar for my whole life and I've never found one. She said, please help me find one. And I said, all right. Are you hunting on that beach you and your family always go on your annual vacation to? And she said, yes. I said, you're never, ever gonna find a sand dollar there. I said, I've never found a sand dollar there. And so I put her on to a couple of locations where I know sand dollars abound, and she found more than one on her first walk. So it's important to pay attention. We're gonna talk about some of the shelling forums where you can learn a lot about the places where these things pop out. You need to study locations to know what's possible in the place that you want to hunt. So if you want a Genonia, which is the most rare seashell in America, I have an example if you've never seen one before. Your best place, they do wash up here, but it's super rare. I've only found pieces here. You want to be in Southwest Florida. There's a couple of specific beaches, and then obviously sand dollars. There's some beaches where, for instance, if I went to, let's see, where could I go? If I went to Paso Grill in Florida, I could find 100 sand dollars in an hour guaranteed. I'd put a wager on it. Jekyll Island in Georgia is another place where they're guaranteed. So knowing those locations matters. So for the best shark tooth hunting locations in my opinion, if you want to snap a pic, please feel free. North Carolina, Holden Beach is my tip top right now. I hunt topsail quite a bit. I like both north and south. If you have a friend or you have military clearance, you can get out on Onslow Beach. That's on Camp Lejeune's military base. Of the three, I actually think Onslow is the best, but you can't access it unless you've got military clearance. In South Carolina, I love Cherry Grove. 100 yards to the north, 100 yards to the south of that pier are fabulous locations. Myrtle Beach is good. I do caution you, however, we're going to talk about night hunting in a little bit. You can't do any night hunting in Myrtle Beach anymore. It's not safe on the beach at night. It doesn't matter if you're in a group, you need to not night hunt in Myrtle anymore. Edisto, a really quick day trip from here. If you've never been to Edisto, you need to add that to your list.
Where?
I'm sorry?
Where do you go in Edisto?
The state park.
Okay.
If you go to Botany Bay, you can't
left?
take anything.
You go left?
I go left.
The inlet?
Yep, 1.8 miles will get you up to the inlet.
Yep.
The walk's good the whole way. Wear leather bottom shoes because there are oyster beds up there and you'll shred your feet.
8 miles to the top of it?
1.8 miles.
Oh, 1.8.
1.8, very walkable. Yep, very walkable, up to the inlet and back. You'll find sand dollars, shark's teeth. I find a lot of horse teeth there for some reason, which are pretty cool. And whelks are super easy to find there, especially once you get up to the inlet. So yeah, I love Edisto a lot. In Florida for shark tooth hunting, Fernandina, which is Jacksonville, and then Venice and Casperson. They actually call themselves the shark tooth capital of America. They're wrong, they're not. You live in the shark tooth capital.
They used to be.
You know, they never were, in my opinion.
I got a jar of steak.
Yeah, the thing about those teeth though, that surf action is so strong, they're small and they're worn down. You're gonna find bigger, equal quantity, and better quality here, in my opinion.
Okay, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, my aunt gave me a jar that was.
You can find a lot of them, but that very few of them are worth very much.
Right.
Like if you go back, like that picture, there are some jewelry grade and great whites, those are worth $50 a pop. Yeah, so yeah, it's a different world, in my
Here, the
opinion.
shark teeth area is Myrtle Beach.
Say it again?
The key area here, in this
Here.
area, is Myrtle Beach.
Myrtle's good. Pretty much top to bottom, Myrtle's good. But if I have my choice, I'm gonna be in Cherry Grove. I tend to find slightly better things in Cherry Grove, and I like the atmosphere better there, and I like the, I think parking's easier, and I find more Carolina Creeks a little bit more. So, and that's really my jam. Shark tooth hunting strategy, if you don't know how to find shark teeth, here are a couple of things that'll help you out. In this area, 99% of them will be black. It's the most common color of fossilization. Let me grab a tooth so I'll remember to tell you this. They are triangular in shape for the most part. They are more shiny than seashells. So the thing that's gonna trick you the most is oyster shells. You might pick up 1,000 pieces of broken oyster shell before you find your first shark's tooth, but once you find it, your brain and your eyeballs will make the connection. And so usually when I'm hunting with new students on the beach, who've never found a shark's tooth before, once I teach them how to find the one, they will find more in that very same day. So there is you can teach your eyes to see anything you want to see, and once the connection's made, you're going to get better and better and better. They are easier to see when they are wet, so as you're just starting out, try to stay down near where the water is either washing over them or has been there very recently. And you want to train your eyes, for the Carolina creams anyway, train your eyes for the root. So I'm not even looking for these Carolina creams, I'm not even looking for the tooth part, the enamel. I'm looking for that brown root. There's nothing else on our Carolina beaches that's that color. So I've just trained my eyes to look for the color, not even the shape.
Isn't it the same color as sand?
The brown, when it is wet, is not. The teeth blend right in with the sand, but those roots stick out.
It's not.
The top of it stands out, so you can actually train your eyes to see it. But back to the 99%, the most common color you're gonna find around here is this color. These are megalodon teeth, which you can find here. When you find them on the beach, they're gonna look usually more like this because they have come out of the place where they fossilized, probably from a beach renourishment project. They've been sucked up by a tube, they've been run over by a bulldozer, and they've been washed around in the shore. It is very unlikely that you will find a megalodon that looks like this on our beaches. It happens, but very, very unlikely. About 50% of the people on social media that you see standing there with a tooth like this saying, "Look what I found under the pier at Myrtle Beach today," are liars. And people who know shark's teeth can often tell because either the color of the tooth doesn't match the fossilization patterns of the place where they said they found it, or I can tell that the tooth has either been polished or lacquered, and it likely came from the gay dolphin.
Or you sold it to them, right?
Or so I sold it to them. So it does happen, and I have seen in a couple of instances where it does legitimately happen. But there's a flood of posts on social media from people who claim they did, which makes it seem like these are a lot more common than they are. But if you'll note, a lot of times those posts are from a kid under a pier on a holiday weekend who has found the tooth, which very much leans towards mom or dad or grandparent bought it, dropped it out, and wanted them to find it, which is fine. My issue is just don't call the news to say you found a giant shark's tooth when that's dishonest. But I've thrown things out for my kid to find too. There's nothing wrong with that. But taking it to the next step is where we want to be careful. A quick note about fossilization too. The process takes about 10,000 years to happen. And 4 things have to happen for it to occur. So 1, as soon as the tooth falls out or the bone drops, or as soon as the animal dies, it's got to be immediately covered up by either sand, sediment, sludge, dirt, sand, something. If it's not, if it's left exposed in the water or if it's left exposed out on the land, over enough thousands of years, it will completely disintegrate and be nothing. But if it gets covered, it's going to be protected. And then over time, more layers need to get piled on top of it to protect it.
And it has to be protected from too much weight, too much heat. If that happens in 10,000 years, it will fossilize, which means the minerals from the sand or the sediment come into it and they make it heavy, they make it rock-like. And that is what protects it over time. So less than 10% of the things that ever live are going to fossilize. So when you find a fossil, it really is a miracle. Scientists have also given us a formula to let us know how big the shark was based upon the size of the tooth we found. We do not measure the roof, which is this dull part up top. We only measure the enamel. And the formula is 1 inch will give you 10 feet of shark. Also, this is 1, 2, 3, that's about 4 inches of enamel. So that's about 40 feet of shark. Megalodon went extinct 3.5 billion years ago. And scientists tell us 40 to 60 feet is a good range. However, I've got some buddies who dive the Cooper River and they're finding teeth that are approaching 7 inches. So I think 70 feet is possible. I don't own any of teeth that big because they're too expensive, but that's a little bit about fossil science. Do you have questions?
I did. Those aren't found on the beach, right? Those are found at
So that can be found on the beach. And I find quite a few smaller megalodons, usually not perfect, but smaller ones. This was a beach find, that's Cherry Grove. This was a river find.
Okay.
Yeah. And so a lot of the pristine teeth that you find in gift shops and things, or online if you're buying, were brought up either by offshore divers in the Atlantic or by inland divers in rivers like the Cooper and the Ashley and the Savannah. The river diving is crazy dangerous. In fact, about once a year or so, a diver will just go missing. And sometimes it's a gator. And sometimes it's like an accident, like somebody gets tangled. So all of those rivers have lots of debris on the bottom. It's really easy to get tangled, and you can't get free, you can't get up until you run out of air, unfortunately. Anyway, that's shark's teeth 101. But the Carolina creams are mostly found on the beach. You can find them while diving, but I think I find more on the beach than my buddies do who dive. Okay. And we just talked about the megalodons and the dukes. One of those dukes, what is that in the middle? It looks like a shark's teeth. Arrowhead. It's an arrowhead. So as you are out hunting for shark's teeth, pay attention. These beaches do have really key arrowheads. Almost all of the ones I've found are black, but I found a really cool spear point. And just be advised, if you're on a public beach, you can keep it. But once you get up into the Outer Banks, if you're on a national protected seashore, any native artifact that's found must be turned over to their museums up there, so you're not allowed to keep it. So just make sure you know the rules where you are hunting, but keep your eyes posted for arrogance while you're out there. My favorite shelling location in Florida, which is really the Mecca, Key Wade, Marco, and Sanibel are ground zero as known as the really best places to hunt. FYI, the lowest water of the whole year of 2026 in Florida is going to be January 1, 2, 3, 4. This gets back to our tide charts. You can look at your tide charts more than a year in advance. So I had those dates on my calendar like a year and a half ago, and I already had lodging booked and charters booked, right? So the people who are really good at this are they're studying charts way in advance and plotting where they're going to be. The Key Wade and Marco Sanibel are sort of as I said, the ground zero. When I get Key Wade in right, these are the horsecocks, one of the most prized shells down there. I'll find more of these than I can literally carry. I have to leave them behind. So hitting it right down there is how you do it. I hunt a lot in the Florida Keys, about 2 months a year. I'm down there. Everybody in the seashell forums, people will say, can you find seashells in the Florida Keys? And everybody who lives there will come in and say, no, you can't. They are also liars. You can find wonderful things on the beach, and you don't even have to be snorkeling or in a boat. You can find them on the beach down there. I hunt Pass and Grill pretty frequently. I love Navarre. And on the east coast of Florida, Juneau Jupiter. If you are in the market for a Scotch bonnet, which is the state shell of North Carolina, so very few people find them. We should have chosen a better state shell. If I get Jupiter right, I'll find 20 or 30 of these in an hour. Right? Or 3 times, and I found 0. You found 0. You're huge shell beds. Okay, so were you hunting above the shell beds? Because what happened the water was down here, the shell beds were here. So let's say this is your shell bed. Now it's here. What happens with Scotch bonnets is because of their aperture, their opening, they roll. So you need to be looking for Scotchies above the shell bed. Okay. Yep. The high line for these is the better spot. And they're not always there. But on the days that they are there, they're in absolute abundance. Yep. And I love bonita quite a bit too. In North Carolina, called it topsail. Ocean Isle is a sneaky one. It's really good for some reason for me in the fall, if you wanted to check it out. And then the Outer Banks. So in the Outer Banks, we have amazing seashells like the Nomad shell that are really hard to find anywhere else. My favorite place for these is Shackleford Banks. You go take a ferry to get out there. Recently, we'll talk about hurricanes in a minute. I've been studying the hurricanes that don't come into shore, that just kind of zippy around. And I read one of them really right. Everybody who was hunting south found nothing. I found more helmets that day than I could carry. Heading up to the Outer Banks is a good bet. as well.
Where else in the Outer Banks is it?
Shackleford's good. My friend John was up in Ocracoke yesterday and found like a bucket of Scotch bonnets. So lots of Hatteras. The entire Hatteras seashore up there is good.
We were in depth, so we didn't find. I wasn't a shell hunter, but we didn't.
I've never found much in Ocracoke and Shackleford. Just the Mike's and go a little bit further. I'll get your question in just a second. I'm going to forget this if I don't. I often see people who get criticized in for seashell wharfs and other places by grumpy folks who say you should not pick up seashells at all. And I always like to address that, but very often their reasoning is if you take them, things like hermit crabs will not have homes. But I always like to point out this is a cross section of the helmet shell. And when the helmet shell is born, you can sort of see the life cycle. So that's how big it was when it was born, or possibly installed in that on the inside. But then shell creatures are able to add new material and grow their shell as they grow. And they're even able to repair. So if something knocks a hole in their shell, they even have the capacity to repair it. So there are not a lot of shelled animals that are out there without shells looking. And with hermit crabs as well, a hermit crab is not going to leave the shell that it's in until it has found a new shell to get into, because they would be like a shrimp that would be exposed and they get eaten by a predator just like that. So there are homeless hermit crabs wandering around, although anybody get into that. And I have good friends who are conchologists, which are professional seashell hunters, who say that within reason, there's nothing wrong with picking up an empty seashell on the beach as long as you know it's empty. As well, when we think about the number of animals and shells that have ever lived in the history of time, that those are seashells they're never going to make it to shore. Such a kind of fraction of seashells ever make it to the shore. That goes up kind of fun depth in the ocean, not only from the animals that are alive now, but for every animal that ever lived. There's no shortage of seashells for the animals to have. So that's my position. What was your question?
I was just curious about Huntington Beach. When you say the word beach, do you include Huntington Beach in that or no?
Don't include Huntington Beach because I never find them. I find little shark's teeth and occasionally seashell, but Huntington is never an area that I center my searching.
May I ask a quick question? Sure. Where do you go on Ocean Island? You go up between Poland and Ocean?
So, and I have a buddy who has a house on Goldsboro Street.
Okay.
And so what I tend to do, that's the first place I check. If I don't like it, I go straight out. If I don't like it, I bounce. We'll talk about beach hopping in a second. I'll bounce around. So if I walk out on the beach and I don't like what I see, I'll get in the car, go somewhere else.
There's a really great inlet up, like not an inlet, but a low area and time.
Yes, and you'd have to walk north for that.
Yes.
It's weird. That's a west. Yeah, this is the west. Yeah. You'd have to walk that way.
Search folded,
Walk that way to get up to it. I never found much up there. I'm happy at Goldsboro because sometimes some good bands wash out there.
Really good deal up there sometimes. Yeah. Just have to be the right team.
Right time. But we'll talk winds control a lot of that, which we're going to get to in just a minute. In Georgia, I love Jekyll Island and Cumberland. Cumberland, you have to have ferries to get to. And it's surprising that people don't think about Alabama as a good place to go hunting. Dolphin Island, and you've never been. It's magic out there. So go see Dolphin. You want to find the shell beds, and you want them to look like the picture on the left instead of the picture on the right. So what you're going to find in a shell bed that's fine and grainy like that are small shark's teeth and small seashells. What you're going to find, this is a weighted island photograph. What you're going to find in the shell hash on the right, that's big and hunky and chunky. That's what you want. You see the whole seashells. You see that big alphabet cone right there. You see lots of whole Florida fighting hunks. So when you walk out and you see seashells that are whole, they're this big, that's an indication to you that it's going to be a good day. If you walk out and it's a blank sand day, you have no shell beds to work with, do not waste a lot of your time or energy. That's a day that you might want to go in and do something else. But when you've got, that's a game day scenario right there, when you've got big, thick shell hatch, and you can see it all the way down the beach. That's really what you're looking for. You also want to position yourself strategically on the beach, and this is important. So, this is Cherry Grove. If I step up on the stage, you can say, this is Cherry Grove at a low tide. So, at the top of the tide, would have been right here, and we're at low tide, so the water's down there. All of these people are doing it wrong. Okay, let me explain why. This area, as I said, was exposed 5-6 hours ago. Guess who was up there 5 or 6 hours ago? You. Me. So there's nothing very good people very little up here. If I was hunting this beach, I would be hunting right here. And the reason for that is we've got the water action that's still working. Everything that's happening from here up is static. Not going to change. What's there is there and has now been kicked over, right? What's happening here with the water still washing over, that's dynamic, still moving, right? You'll notice when the water is washing over a shell bed, it looks like there's more material there. And as soon as the water pulls down, it's like it goes flat and it looks like there's less material there. So if you're on a beach like this at a low tide, you want to be where the water is still washing over. The only exception to that would be if I arrived to this beach at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? There are no footprints. I'd be the only one who's hunting. I would be hunting up high, but what I'd be doing is making a really fast pass, and I'd be zigzagging in a grid. First, looking for big things. So I walk a long distance when I'm out hunting. First, I'm going to be looking for big stuff. And I can almost be at a run, and I'm still going to see shells that are this big. I'm going to see sharks that are this big, even if I'm moving really, really quickly. It is my pass back. Let's say I walk 4 miles that way, fast. When I'm coming back, that's when I go slow, and that's when I'm looking for small seashells and small shark sheep. But I don't get up at 1 o'clock in the morning to get out on the beach to find little things. I want to find big things. So you move fast first, and then on your return is when you slow down to look for other things. The season also matters. So I do a lot of winter low tide shelling in Florida. My Carolina fossil hunting season is actually just now going into full swing. It will be good all the way through the winter. And I love summer low tide shelling in the Florida Keys. I spend June and July there. So paying attention to the season is definitely going to help you out. You also want to chart the wind. This might be the most important thing I say, so pay attention to this. That's my kiddo, by the way. His name is Miller. He found all of those clean conchs in Florida last summer in one walk. Yeah. We kept having to make trips back to the car to put them in. But with the wind, it is the single element of the shelling equation, the shark tooth hunting equation, that beachcombers are paying the least attention to. And I think it's the most important because of all of the things that I've told you. If the wind is blowing in the wrong direction, it will undo all, right? You've got to have the wind blowing in the right direction. How do you know what the right direction is? I'm probably going to write a book about wind for Shelley soon. I got to get through this book tour, then I'll do it. But the way I have figured out the beaches that I love is by tracking them in journals over a long period of time. So go to TJ Maxx or Marshall's today, invest $12 or $15 in a couple of blank journals, and make a journal for every beach location that you hunt frequently. Every time you go out, write down the date, what direction was the wind blowing, what was the wind speed, what was the moon, and smiling face where you found a lot, sad face where you found not much. Over time, pay attention to those happy faces because it's going to show you what is the favorable wind direction or combination of wind speed for the beach that you like to hunt. So for instance, at Holden Beach, if the wind is blowing out of the north, I won't be there. Doesn't matter if all the other factors I've told you about are right. The northerly wind there is the kiss of death. I like it to be southerly or some combination of southerly and westerly. And again, it took me a long, long time to figure that out. The beach locations are also very, very specific. So what works for the western part of Ocean Isle Beach might not be what works with the eastern part of Ocean Isle Beach because it's pretty big, right? So keep journals of the places you like to hunt, and over time you're going to be able to see those patterns. Did you have a question, Amias? Yeah.
I was curious about where you are in terms of north and south, because I'm assuming that the tides are much bigger the further north you go. Because just because of the way things are. I'm thinking Bay of Fundy, things like that, where you get 20-foot tides. I was just wondering if that affects it.
Yes, so I do not hunt much further than Virginia. And for me, the height of the tides doesn't change very much from the places that as far as a factor, it doesn't change very much in the places that I might all the way around to like Alabama, Louisiana area. What does change, however, when you look at North and South Carolina, just as an example on the map, our map continually undulates, right? So the northerly on this beach is going to hit differently than the northerly on that beach. So that's why that location specificity is so important, because those minor differences can be the thing that will change the whole equation for you. And so with the winds, these are alphabet cones. If you've never seen them before, they are one of the most desirable seashells in Florida. Any seashell hunter that finds one of these is elated. There was one day down there a few years ago where I read all of the conditions correctly. I found 220 feet of them in a single one. I was flabbergasted.
Where were you?
I was on Keyway Island in Florida. I had to take a boat to get out there. But what's amazing about these is the animal, when it makes the pattern on its shell, it actually creates dots that look like letters. And so like you can see the H really clearly right there. And so there are people who collect alphabet cones that try and get one letter for every alphabet. But
The critters that live in the shells make the pattern.
they do. Now, they don't know the alphabet, but the pattern, for some reason, the pattern, I don't know why. Let's talk to God about it. The patterns, the shell, the dot patterns will often form letters of the alphabet.
I didn't know the critter made the marks on.
Yes, the critter controls everything about every shell. The critter is in control. So I was hunting down in Florida, so it was last year, and I picked up one of those, and it had a very clear Stevie, which is the initials of one of my dear friends. I've never even found an AO, and I flipped completely out. I'm like, I'm going to give this to him. He's going to be so excited. And so I took it. He's not a sheller. And I took it to him. I'm like, look what I found. It's like, oh, it's my letters on a, I'm like, you don't understand. Like, I will never find an AO, but I found yours, and I need you to be a little. Thank you are. So if you're down there, look for your letters. It's a lot of fun. We need to scoot. I want to leave enough time for you to have questions. Fall systems, tropical systems, and even just like general everyday bad weather can have an impact. If the winds get above 25 miles an hour, I'm going to pay attention. That can happen with the summer thunderstorm sometimes. So pay attention is good with tropical systems. It has been my experience that you often have to wait until they pass before you're going to know if it has positively or negatively impacted shelling. The reason for that is when a big system comes through, first, if the winds were blowing in the wrong direction when the storm exited, it can sand over the whole beach and it will suck out everything. So the wind blowing 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction will kill the shelling on a beach for a long, long time. But even if those winds had been blowing in the right direction at the end of that storm, you have to wait for the wave heights to come down before anything that got dislodged is actually going to make it to the beach. I like a wave height below 3 feet. 3 feet or below. What I have discovered is whatever gets dislodged, as those wave heights are high, as the ocean's trying to calm down, it's just going to cycle around and around and around and never make it to shore. So you may have to wait 4 or 5 tide cycles before the bump from a tropical system is going to manifest on the beach. A lot of people get frustrated. The hurricane just passed. I want to be the first one out. I didn't find anything. It kept getting patient. Was that it takes days? It can take days. So with the day that I went up forward on Shackleford, after a storm system just came like a glancing blow, I waited 3 days and I was watching wave heights. And you can watch wave heights through a fisherman's forecast. It tells you things like water clarity, how high the water's going to be and that kind of stuff. And I hit it. I booked my boat tickets, and I hit it just right. And as soon as the boat landed, we got on the island. I had to run because there were other people behind doing at the same thought. And this is why I train. It said, I ran. There was a man behind me, 2 solid miles, trailed me. And my husband, when I came back from the adventure, my husband said, as soon as you left, he was standing there with my son, and he said, Mom will drop dead before she left the valley.
It didn't look me.
My husband was like, she absolutely will. And so he gave up about 1.5 miles in. And I was not in shape to run 2 straight miles, but I did it for the sake of the shells. So I do find that the more physically fit that you can be, it helps, particularly at night. During fossil hunting season, I'm competing against, they're all men out there at night. And they are, for some reason, all really tall. They've got super long legs. So for every step they take, I have to take 2. And if they're walking fast, that means I have to run to stay out ahead. So being first really does matter. And so being a short woman, and you have to hustle. So, but back to the original point, weight heights matter. You got to wait for them to come down after a storm. We talked briefly about training your eye. So with this shark tooth, with that seashell over the bottom, that's what I saw. I've trained my eye to see that root, the hook of the root of that sand tiger shark's tooth. There's nothing else like that that's that shape on the beach. So I taught my eyes to see the shape of the root, and that's how I uncovered that tooth. A few things if you want to sort of take your game to the next level. It helps if you can fall in love with the early morning. And by early morning, I mean like 3 and 4, to be able to get out when nobody else is there. And so that's one of the reasons that I love night hunting so very much, is because I am out there by myself. We'll talk about night hunting in a second. I've already mentioned beach hopping. Very often on social media, you'll see a picture of someone who's been out. They found wonderful things, and there they stand at 9 o'clock in the morning. Look what I found today. They're like, how did they find that? What you don't see on social media is very often that person got up in the middle of the night and they went to a beach. It turned out to not be good. And so they drove 30 minutes to a different beach, which also turned out to not be good. So they drove an hour to another beach, which also turned out to not be good. And then they drove another hour to get to the beach where they found all the great things. You don't see all that hopping, all that gas money, all that time, all that effort. You see the picture of them standing there with the beautiful things. You're like, hey, I've never done anything like that before. Very often it's just they hopped around and they put in the time. Also, walking the miles matters. So I'll hear sometimes from people who will say, I went sharks tooth hunting and I didn't find anything. I'm like, okay, tell me where you were hunting first. Then tell me how long were you hunting. They're like, 30 minutes. All the people just go, okay. So it was just a game of patience. When you see those handfuls that I found, I may have walked literally sun up to sundown. I may have covered 15 miles to find what I found. So it's about time and it's about distance. It matters. Night hunting. Things to consider with night hunting. I love it because I like being out there by myself and not being able to see, can't really see, but you can hear the ocean. You're going to see animals out there that you would never see during the day. And I find a peace in my life that I can't find anywhere else except on the beach under a big moon by myself. Some people are really freaked out by being out there by themselves at night. For some reason, I love it. You do, however, have to be concerned with safety. So if you see me out there at night, I will always have bear spray in my hand, not in my bag, not in my bucket, not in my pocket, in my hand with my finger on the trigger. And I like the kind that shoots straight for 20 feet. So whatever the threat is, whether it's a person or an animal, doesn't have to get close to you. You can neutralize it. In the other hand, you will see me with a knife out of the sheath, not in my bucket, not in my pocket, in my hand. So I keep my shelling bucket on my arm right here. And I keep that knife with the blade out back so that if somebody came up behind me, I'd be able to go back with it. The reason that I do that is my personal safety has really become, my need to guard it has become very apparent in the last year or so. I had a really scary situation that happened in the Florida Keys. It's been a year last July. Bad guy, long story short, bad guy was waiting in the bushes. I was on a very, very remote stretch of beach. We looked completely alone. I had left my bear spray in the car. And it was going to be, I knew exactly what the scenario was. I knew what he was there to do. He was a big, big guy. He outweighed me by double my weight and was super tall. So if he had been able to get a hand on me, it would have been over. And there was nobody around. And so never been in a situation like that before. And you never know how you're going to react. I didn't know if I would panic, if I would freeze. First thing I got was mad. very surprised. So anger first, but then I got super analytical, thankfully. And I was like, how tall is he? How big is he? I was even looking at his shoes. What kind of shoes is he wearing? Can I run faster than he can in the shoes that I'm wearing? I had good situational awareness, so I saw him wrestling in the bushes, so he never got close enough to grab. And I knew it's important that you know the beach where you're hunting if you're by yourself. I knew that the last hurricane, I was at the end of a military runway. There's a Navy airstrip that comes right up on that beach. And I knew the last hurricane had washed down one fence panel that would have let me get out to the end of the runway. I would have likely been arrested for trespassing on the property, and that would have been fine. They would have seen me coming on their cameras, and that would have been okay, but I was able to outrun it. And so ever since then, even during the day, I take 0 chances with safety. With night hunting too, you need to be aware of animals that you may encounter out there, not to scare people. I see coyotes very, very regularly on our beaches here. I have heard the rattle of a rattlesnake, though it was dark and I did not see it. And I have also, though not in the beach, in the area, I have seen mountain lions in the Piedmont of North Carolina and other big cats like panthers very far outside of the areas where the wildlife officials say they are. So when they create those maps, sometimes they're 10 years old. We are cutting down trees at a dramatic rate. So where those animals are is changing all the time. And those animals have legs. So they don't stay within the bounds of where those maps say they should. You also need to be prepared to see an alligator on the beach if you're out there at night. Sometimes they get out of the water where they're supposed to be. They get into the salt water. When they come ashore, they are very agitated and very disoriented. You don't want to accidentally come up on one, because when you're hunting with a light, you can only see that little light from you don't have a scope of vision, I should say. And you don't want to be up on it because alligators can move fast. You don't want to be surprised about one being on the beach at night. So night hunting's excellent, and you'll find great things because you're the only one on that tide. So think about July 4th, the 100,000 people on that beach, you're not going to find anything. But in the middle of the night, you're going to find all kinds of things because everybody else is asleep. We talked about safety. We're always to the end. I'll make sure you have time to ask questions. With live shelling, this is how you tell the difference. So with a seashell, this is the aperture. That's the opening. If you can see anything in there, or if you can stick your hand in there and feel anything, it might feel like a blob, or it might have little legs like a crab sticking out. If you can see it or feel it, it's alive. Considered alive, you cannot take it. If, however, it's empty, you can stick your hand all the way back in there, not feel anything. It's good to take. I would also advise you to let your buckets sit for 30 minutes before you leave the beach. Put it down, don't touch it, because if there is like a tiny little creature that's gotten in a big shell, in 30 minutes time, he or she will start moving and let you know he's there. So you don't get home and realize I brought up a passenger. With sand dollars, if it has fur, it's alive. You can't take it. And I love that picture. I can actually see it moving through the sand. If it's slit, if it's any color, but it's slit, there's no fur, it's long mid there, you can take it. So the fur is actually called cilia. That's what they used to move through the sand. Also, sea beans, if you're unfamiliar, are my new obsession. They are durable seed pods that fall off of plants, vines, shrubs, and trees all over the world, and then they hit the world's currents and float to other places. Find them a lot, sometimes here, but in the Florida Keys in the summer. That's when I love to find them the most. But I love all of this because it's a lifelong learning hobby. I know a lot, but I love that every single day I can learn new things. And I'm never going to reach the point at which I know everything. You're going to meet some people online and think they know everything, but they don't. And I love this because you're able to continue learning. I think that's everything for me. I also believe that Mother Nature, it will continue to take care of us as beachcombers as long as we take care of it. This was last summer in the Florida Keys. That is a marked sea turtle nest. Somebody on a beach where alcohol is not even allowed had a party, and the ocean is where we are. So those baby turtles, when they hatched, and it was hatching season, we're going to have to crawl through Bud Light cans to try to get to the ocean. So we don't do this. And I also believe that these beaches are not going to calm themselves. So I hope whatever you take from today will inspire you to want to get out there, to maybe improve your strategy, to start thinking about components of your game that you've never considered before. It's really thrilling to the first time that you read the conditions correctly and you see what a difference it makes in what you find. It's absolutely thrill. So I encourage you to start studying, and start charting, and pay more attention to what signals the environment gives you, because it could change everything. So what question?
So beach renourishment, how much of that affects styling? Right here in South Litchfield, they get immersed a few years ago.
Big deals.
And I found some fantastic things. And you go out there in the winter and there'd be so many shells washing up. They wash up right in front of you. It was amazing. And it's not like that anymore.
It's not. Most of our renourishments are going to give us, if they're good at all, are going to give us about 6 months of a bust of good hunting. The Holden beach renourishment is different for some reason, and I think it had to do with the sheer volume of material that made it onto the beach. So what made Holden there 3 years ago? What made that renourishment different? For renourishment, for those of you who don't know, that's when we pump new sand on the beach to try to combat erosion. All of our communities are doing it now. When they did that one, when the tubes went down, they had made a Cretaceous material. First time that's ever happened on the Green Strand to my knowledge, at least as long as I've been alive. Second thing, they ran the pump slow. When they run the pump slow, more of the big chunky material makes it to the beach. When they run the pumps fast, more of that big material is skimmed off. So the last couple of renourishments that they've done in Cherry Grove, they have run those pumps super fast. They are doing nothing but shooting blank sand on the beach. What that does is mess up what was a good hunting beach by dumping a bunch of blank sand on it. Litchfield, of all of the renourishments, there was a good Cherry Grove renourishment about 20 years ago. Holden's the best one I've ever seen. Litchfield is the second best one I've seen. That one 20 years ago, Cherry Grove, is the third best I've ever seen. But the Grand Strand ones in general, I'm not optimistic about, because they're getting ready to do Myrtle and North Myrtle again. I'm not optimistic about those. With those renourishments too, though I love the bumps we get, they are terrible for our environment. All of these companies that are doing it will have an environmental study, and they'll find an expert and will say it doesn't have any impact. It absolutely does. So when they dump that blank sand, they are smothering the microscopic organisms that live just under the surface. They are disrupting every animal, whether it's a nesting bird, whether it's a fish. They're clouding up the water. Every animal in the food chain is disrupted by it. It's when we also pay really close attention, all it takes is that one next door, and it sucks it all back at millions and millions of dollars, and it's all sucked right out. So I am not an advocate of the renourishments, but I'm not going to lie, when they hit with the good showing and shark-tooth hunting, it's fun. But they're not the right thing for us to be doing. The ocean's going to eventually she's going to take what she wants. So we can keep fighting it with millions of dollars. We might just need to consider not building stuff so close to a moving shoreline. Let's start there. But
those seed ponds that come from all over the world, are they viable? Are they dormant? Have you ever planted any of them?
They're interesting. So yes, there have been studies that sea bass that have been floating for over 100 years can still be viable. They're that durable. Now, if we got one that came, a lot of them come from Central and South America. If we got one that came from there, we might be able to sprout it here, but that plant won't thrive because we're not rainforests. The exception to that, there's one indigenous sea bean. It's called the knicker nut, sometimes called a knicker bean. They're gray. The more rare one, though, is a yellow. I actually found one of the yellows this summer. You may have heard me screaming from Florida up here. It's actually called yellow knicker nut, unidentified species number 3. They don't even know what it is. And I found one that was that rare. So I came run it home that day, and my family was around the kitchen table, and I said, I found a yellow unidentified knicker nut number 3. And they're like, yay, you're really happy. I'm like, I will never find another one of these, ever. But yes, they are viable. And what's neat about it is if you learn the species names, you can often tell what country they came from. So it's a super cool thing to do with kids or grandkids. They find the being, you make them discover what is the species, where did it come from, and then you make them write a report about the country. I'm a homeschool. But no, sea beings, there's a great Facebook page called Sea Beings you need to join. They are beautiful, especially some of the more rare ones. So that probably the most rare one in America besides the yellow one that I found. There it is. It's called a Mary's being, and I've only come 2. And the more rare one is the brown one. I found a brown one last summer, also screen. But once you're into the sea beings, though, you're into the sea beings. You're going to go down the rabbit hole, but it's a fun rabbit hole to be.
Do they follow the same, tide and wind and so forth as the seashell?
They are very, very, very wind dependent, more so than anything else, because they ride the top of the water and they get caught in the seaweed. So when seaweed is coming in, even here, when seaweed banks come in, that's when you want to be looking in the high line for the sea beings. Okay.
Have you found yours mostly in Florida?
Yeah. So I have found one hamburger in Georgia. I found some sea hearts in the Carolinas and some more common species up here in the Carolinas, the Florida Keys. On the Florida Keys, you want the Atlantic side, not the Gulf side. Yeah. For beings anyway.
I was down in Comas for a long time, and we got that sargassum that came in. I found so many urchin. Yes, dead. Just massive amounts of water. Yep.
So the brings in some good stuff. So
Didn't know this, but
never does. You want to be, if you are hunting in the seaweed, you want to make sure you're wearing shoes, because it is bringing, I'm seeing an increase in medical waste that I'm seeing that gets tangled up. Lots and lots of needles, vials of blood, and other samples that I thought all kinds of you would delete the things that I find in the Florida Keys, including parcels of things.
yeah.
Interesting packages wash up down there. And you got to be careful when those packages wash it too. You want to make sure you get out of the area.
When it's that don't touch them, right?
Yeah, don't touch. You didn't see anything. Don't touch and don't. Yeah, you get out. You get out of the area. A lot of times those now have air tags on them. So the person who had to ditch them to keep from being caught, well, it knows where they are, and you can stop the interior where it comes in. If you'd like to continue on with your life.
Yes, I know it has nothing to do with shells, but I was wondering about the migration of the beaches themselves. Are they going north? Are they because of perhaps the coastal the flow? I'm sorry, it just was by my mind. Whatever the fact is. But I was just wondering if there is a migration of the beaches.
I wouldn't necessarily say a migration of the beaches. I know that things like hurricanes make dramatic impacts. So where there was an inlet, there might not be one anymore, or these storms can cut the new inlet. I know in places like Sanibel, Florida, the Hurricane Ian that came through there, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3 now. It was 2 years ago. That beach never recovered. And they'd have had to so dramatically reshape it. It's like you're hunting in a completely different location. And a lot of that, though, is man-made. They decided to come in and make a lot of changes. But the hurricane itself obviously decimated the island. But I don't know that the shelling will ever fully recover, but based on what it used to be there, unfortunately. But I think storms may be the bigger impact. But
I always think the Gulf Stream.
the Strait, yeah. When you look over time, and I'm talking like millions of years, the earth changes like dramatically. And like even Florida, when you look at what during different ages, the entire peninsula of Florida used to be completely under water. And so we're talking, hundreds and hundreds of millions of years ago. But yeah, the earth's moving, it's changing. And but as far as a micro, like in our existence today, I think storms are the major thing that do it. Anything else? It's good I didn't have to call on anybody. I'm a teacher and I will call in.
If you said Myrtle Beach is no longer safe at night,
It's not. About 2 years ago, he was coming to hunt with my son, and we pulled into the Skyville parking lot as the sun was coming up, and I had a security guard come running. I was getting ready to walk up to pay. He came running and said, get in your car, get in your car. And I said, okay, why? Oh, we're coming to hunt. And he said, nope. He said, there's not security out there. And he said, until there are more people around, he said, you and your kid do not need to be out there. Get in the car and go. And this was daylight. And so I had a further chat with him, and he just said that there's just a lot going on down there. And I was specifically on the boardwalk area. And I take my Ollie classes there to hunt during the daytime. But I think it's the night or very early in the morning before there's a lot of people stirring. I don't ever want to say anything in a presentation. Like I don't want to excite a group about night hunting and have somebody go out and get hurt. And I do not hunt at night in murder.
And you don't ever go on any of those roads that go, or the tunnels that go under the streets, because they say that there's so much
Activity, drug activity stuff happening in there.
things down Liberty State Park.
I never find much in there. And so I honestly wouldn't be good to answer. But it's been a long time since I've hunted there. I did maybe, it's been many years since
Are you on Facebook? There's a couple of good shelling. Carolina sea shellers, Carolina shellers. Carolina shellers is more in South Carolina. Carolina sea shellers is more in North.
I love Carolina sea shellers. It's a good age. Yeah. Also, if you're not on the East Coast Possum Club, you need to be.
Oh yeah, Shark State. That's a very good training to identify things.
Yeah. We will close. I'll be glad to answer any question that I didn't get to, but I think maybe some people have other things they need to go do. I thank you very much for your time. I'll stay there till 9:30 tonight. Thank you.
Let me just say two things. One, we've got first Thursday in March. We have our speaker is lingering here. This is Justin McIntyre from the South Carolina Maritime Museum. So he'll be here talking about the Clyde Steamship Company. And it's, it was crucial to it's linking South Carolina to the outer world back in the day. So Justin will be back in March. And as Ashley said, her mom is going to be back. And that's going to be part of the glorious cause, South Carolina in the American Revolution. She's going to focus her talk on preserving, saving historic homes and buildings in South Carolina for that. And it's April 23rd, Thursday, April 23rd, which is, I remember that because that's Shakespeare's court. No connection, but it just stands out in my mind. So, don't miss that. That's a great, mother and daughter team, obviously.
She's definitely your mother.
Pretty talented fans and they are set. So keep that in mind, put that on your calendar and come back for that.
You had a question. I think I jump one of this coming up. Have you searched down pretty over pretty all? Yeah, I will tell them my first question not, and I know I can see it with last year and what and tell them the story. That's the thing that most people just find wells. That's one of the predominant things. It says I think one of which I have is blessed. That I like this helmet so much. You can that's so standing up and cool. So you should not be illustration. Sure, real one time of them and half an hour we send up on Shell looks. Hey, yeah, I found this in the Litchfield deflation just last week. It looks like it came from the gay dolphin with the shiny silver. I think that's maybe a wedding channel. So people buy them at the Gay Dolphin or elsewhere, and they sprinkle them on the beach for a wedding. And so that's how a lot of species that aren't indigenous to the area, because that's not indigenous. And that's not even a Florida shell. That looks like a Caribbean one to me. That's like so unusual. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, darn. It's the only thing good I'm finding is always island shells. I think that's what I most said. They're so special. I love that. I'm still really bad in shark teeth. But you've had so much more activity than former classmates in different classes. I remember. How you doing? I'm doing fine. Good to see you. I'm good.
We've treated weight class too, which I actually read only in the city. Like I
what you
not do in high school. So thank you.
It's a good book.
I just let him anyway. Yeah, I'll teach him that class.
I'm glad.
Okay, well, I'm going to take your class for that. I can't.
You need to.
Yeah, I will.
I'm always learning new stuff, so I'll be bringing new stuff that I'm learning. And it'll be, some of the stuff will be the same, but it'll be slightly different.
Carols, we can use it all,
Yep. What I am going to do, I think going forward, is do 2 classroom days.